Wait, I'm sorry. Hang on. Just real quick.
Yeah.
Your roommate was Stanley Tucci?
Yeah. I think it was around 2000, 2001 when NHL Hits was done. But I did 17,000 vocal calls in that game.
Second City is responsible for everybody from Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd to folks like Steve Carell. I think you even mentioned that you used to audition with Steve.
I never wanted to be one of those bitter actors, and believe me, there's plenty in this town, every town. I've got my own thing. I want to have fun with going back and forth with the audience that's enjoying the game. So that's
you heard it here first, folks. Hey, folks, before we get into the show today, I wanted to remind you that I'm still working with my friends over at Legends of Boom. And if you stay tuned to the mid-roll part of the show, I have some special instructions on how you can redeem the codes that are going to be in the description of this video. And you can score yourself some free deck boxes, not just packs of cards, but like whole boxes full of deck packs. In the game Legends of Boom, you can add a whole bunch of weapons to your arsenals just by redeeming the free codes that I have for you. And I'll have instructions on how to do that a little bit later on in the show. Folks, welcome to what was going to originally be the very last episode of 2024, but I decided instead that I wanted this episode to be how I kicked off the year 2025. I have so many amazing plans that are in the works, many of which are actually going to be unrolling throughout the month of January. And so I figured what better way to kick off the new year than with one of the absolute best interviews I've ever done. I'm so excited to sit down with someone who is considered royalty in the video game voiceover world. He's a dude who's been the voice for NBA Jam, NBA Showtime, NFL Blitz, and so many other games. I've known him since 2019, and I tell the story pretty early on in the podcast about how he and I met. But I was not prepared for where this interview ended up going, how much time he generously lent to me to be able to sit down and actually talk about his story, talk about some of his early days studying comedy at the legendary comedy workshop out of Chicago that's known for producing literally all of the most amazing SNL comedy greats. He went to the same school. Yeah, it's just, we'll get into all of that during the interview. But folks, I'm telling you, if you've never seen an episode of my show before, do yourself a favor, stay all the way till the end of this one. And I'll even just throw it out there now. If you haven't yet, I suggest subscribing to the Patreon to check out the bonus, because I've got another extra half an hour of bonus content that I recorded with Tim just for the sake of this episode. And that's going to be available on my Patreon, along with all of the other bonus content for the other episodes that I've recorded for this show. Tim, along with being an incredible voice talent, is also one of the founding members of First Moon Games and one of the creative minds behind Legends of Boom, and of course created the character of Flip Rimrod. And so I'm very excited to talk to Tim, not only about his early days of his career and some of the biggest titles that he's worked on, but of course, I'm also excited to talk to him a little bit about First Moon Games and what the process was like founding his very first game studio this past summer. Interestingly, he was one of the first people I reached out to when I started this show in the beginning of 2024. And he said, "Hey man, I'm a little busy this summer, but can you get back to me a little bit later on in the year, like sometime around fall?" And he couldn't tell me why. And I, of course, respected that. I said, "Okay, man, no problem. I'll reach out again later." And then, when the Retro Gaming Expo came around in 2024, we ended up going to dinner along with several other talents from the Mortal Kombat team, some of which I was able to interview last year on the show, as well as, of course, General Malice and his wife from Malice Media. And you know what? We had an amazing time. And so, once we all got a chance to sit down, have dinner, and hang out a little bit, it was really cool to not only to hear about Tim's successes this last year, but also just to reaffirm with him, yeah, he's ready to come on the show. And so we finally did the thing. I have been waiting for this interview for a while. I think it came out even better than I expected, and that I truly hope you enjoy my interview with Tim Kitzrow. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show today, man. I can't tell you how much this means to me.
Welcome, DJ Switch, to downtown Chicago. Switch is lighting it up from downtown. How are you, man? Good to see you. It's been a while.
Good to see you, man. So you and I finally got, like, we met, I think, originally in 2019.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was DJing at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and I think it was my nephew that went and said, hey, man, the DJ wants to say hi. But, like, I was stuck behind those turntables. There was no way I could get out of there. And I remember you literally, suitcase in hand, you were on your way out the door, and you made it a point to come by and stop by the DJ booth, say hello, and then you asked for my microphone. And if Tim Kitzrow asked for the microphone, you don't say no. Right?
It's a problem of mine. You're best off just looking. Don't make eye contact and walk in the other direction. Because if you give me a mic, let me show you what I got right here. This is what I bring to my shows. This is the party machine right here, and this is another guy right here. I always have something going. So I probably grabbed your mic and said, "All right, DJ, you ready to spit some fire? Time to drop the bass. Wait for it. Wait for it. Boom shakalaka. DJ Switch, everybody." Yeah, something like that.
You said goodbye to everybody. You thanked everybody for coming to the expo, which is kind of my job, but I didn't mind that time. And then you started, you know, just kind of riffing. Yeah. And you know, it was such an amazing experience for me as a lifelong NBA Jam fan. And you know, it was but it was also cool to see you kind of do the thing live and in the moment, and to realize that, like, you know, as somebody who's known for doing this thing, for voicing this game, for voicing a lot of other games like it or that have spun off from it, you know, it was really, I think, one of the most incredible things to me is, as a fan of comedy, as a fan of actors, as a fan of voice actors, other voice actors in the industry, you know, it immediately clicked for me watching you do this in 2019, like, oh, this is a dude who's being very generous with his time and with his talent. And it took me from, you know, a passive fan who knew you and knew your work to, no, I'm now a fan of this person. Like, as a human, like, you don't have to do those things. You don't have to go to the conventions. You don't have to sign the stuff. You don't have to do the voice. You choose to, and you choose to with a big smirk on your face. Oh, yeah. And with, from what I can tell, your only real motivation is to bring smiles to people.
Well, think of it this way. I did something, 31 years ago or something ridiculous. I'm locked up in a little sound booth. It was one of those old kind of, they called the meat locker sound booth. It's like a portable refrigerator, walk-in refrigerator, not even a walk-in.
Egg crate foam on the wall.
Yeah, it was real small. And I came in 3 or 4 times, a few hours here, a few hours there, maybe 10 hours of work. A lot of it was just doing the roster, screaming into the microphone, walked away, never thought anything of it. Didn't really follow video games, not a video gamer, was pursuing an acting career. So it was just fun. I had fun. I love basketball. Like, oh, this is great. And I'm gone. And then 31 years later, there's all this, you know, NBA Jam hype, because it became like, I always equate things to music, because music is really my other huge passion. If Elvis went in and did like Pound Dog or whatever his big Jailhouse Rock, and then he walked away and he waited tables for a bunch of years, because that's what I did afterwards.
Oh, wow.
And then 30 years later, Jailhouse Rock was always the hit it was, but no one ever knew it was him. That's kind of like my life. Me going out on the road all these years later to people who grew up on it, like, I was Elvis in the studio, but I didn't know it with the big hit. That's my point. Like, NBA Jam was a hit, but nobody knew who I was. I didn't know that anyone knew or cared who I was. I knew the game was fun, it was popular, and it made $1 billion, but I didn't get the connection to me, and that there would be people all these years later. So for me to go out and see the reaction of people like, oh my God, that was not only the best game, but you gave me so much, you know, fun and thrills, and your voice or your calls or whatever, never made that connection. And so I have so much fun relating, hearing the stories from people. There it is.
Yeah.
People bringing in their childhood games. I mean, what a thrill. It's like, I tell people, I feel kind of like Santa Claus coming to meet people who grew, kids who grew up because they were 10 years old or whatever, and now they're 40 because 30 years ago. And
easy. All right, easy. Hey, wait a minute.
The happiness that you have when you're a kid, when you're like, 5 or 10, going to the mall to see Santa, the excitement on Christmas Eve, and then you grow up and go, oh, Santa's not real. Well, in my case, it's like all that happiness because a lot of kids got the game around Christmas when it was the home version, whatever. It's attached to happy childhood memories. So my correlation here is Christmas, Santa Claus, like boom shakalaka, the game NBA Jam, happy memories, childhood. So what if all these years later, like if you meet Santa Claus, you go, no, man, Santa Claus, you're not real. Like Scotch tape on your beard. So if you're 40 years old, you're not buying Santa Claus, but you meet me and go, wow, you are real. I didn't know you were real. I thought you existed just in the video game. So there's this suspended disbelief in this time machine that adults go through, I think, when they meet me, because it just automatically brings them back and they go, I can't believe you're real. That was then, and wow. And then, of course, we're going to have fun because that's what the game was about. That's what I try to bring to it. It's really an incredible gift for me after all these years to get the feedback and the love from the fans. So that's what it's all about.
Well, I got to tell you, man, like after meeting you and then, we've met a couple of times since. And then most recently, we got a chance to go to dinner with Derek and the Mortal Kombat guys. Every single time that I've been around you, I think the big thing for me as one of those kids that is now grown into an adult and loved NBA Jam.
Debatable. Don't get ahead of yourself there.
Well, as one of those kids that loved NBA Jam back in the 90s, man, like the thing about you is that just when you open your mouth, it still feels like 1992. It feels like you sound exactly the same. You have the exact same energy, if not more so in real life. And, if there's anything that I want folks to take away from this, if they're watching this at home, it's that Tim Kitzrow in 2024 is exactly the same, if not better, than he was in 1992. And as somebody who, never thinks about getting to meet those people that had that influence on the media they were consuming as children, like to meet you now in 2024 and to realize that, like just to unlock that thing, because you still have that energy, you still have that passion, you still have that drive. Like absolutely, you've lost absolutely none of it.
Welcome to NFL Blitz 99, and that was totally unnecessary, but a whole lot of fun to watch. Let's see it again, Arnie. Oh, yeah, you can see the bone snapping out there. That's just terrible. Oh, he just ripped that guy's head off. Oh, it was just his helmet. Damn it. So, there was so much fun. It's like you can flip a switch, man. It's crazy. But it's always been there. That's the weird thing. So for years, that energy, that love of performance, love of sports, sports performance, that's why it was the perfect storm for me. I didn't realize I'm searching, trying like every other actor, trying to make it in Chicago as the actor. You're getting commercial auditions, you're stage, blah, blah, blah. But I never thought in a million years I'm going to be doing voice work. But in the end, I go, this is actually the perfect thing. This is my second city improv training to create stuff on the spot. I do all my writing for all my gigs, and it's comedy and it's performance and it's sports. So it's everything. And who else has that chance? I realized later, there are not a lot of people certainly in our industry, in the game industry, that can bring all those things, the voice, the sports, acting, the improv, in performance, and have the ability to shape a franchise like MLB Slugfest and Blitz, more than Jam. Jam, I just went in. John Hay, who's the great composer for the NBA Jam song, and he was responsible for putting voice, script, speech, talent into games. He gave me this gig, and I sat there and I screamed like I do on the playground since I was 10 years old. Like we all have it in us, right? I never thought there was any great performance there. It was just me being me, like being a kid.
Right.
But Blitz and Slugfest, the other ones, I got to help shape the comedy. Like NBA Jam is just what he listened to, John Hay listened to on the weekends. He'd sit down, watch Marv Albert. Oh, Marv said this. He's on fire. Rejected, grabs the rebound. He just grabbed phrases That's what he did. Because we wanted this. This was going to be a sim game. No one was thinking like, this is going to be a crazy over-the-top arcade game. It was like, we have the best technology now to make the most realistic players. We're doing video capture. Never been done before for a sports game. You know, they just use it for Mortal Kombat. That's why those two games are such groundbreakers and why they look so cool. So he's just thinking, okay, so it's going to look like a real game, so it should sound like one. So I'm going to grab all this stuff. Rejected grabs the rebound from downtown. Those are things we heard during the game. So there's not a lot of me in there. I'm sure I improvised some stuff. But when Blitz came along, now the formula, kind of like the secret formula that was going on there at Midway, they didn't know it when they were doing it. They, as I said, it was going to be a very realistic sports game. Mm-hmm. But one time late at night, someone came in the room and they're tinkering around with the dunks, and someone, you know, made the guy jump extra high, the little pixel guy. And someone, you know, like 3 a.m, like, it's funny, he jumped really high. And someone said, make him jump higher. Like, he jumped really high. It's like,
gosh.
Hey, light him on fire. That'd be funny. So it's like a bunch of stone guys like, hey, he jumped really high and he dunked it and he's on fire. That's funny. It's like, he shall jump high and it shall be funny. It shall entertain fans for millions of years and make billions of dollars. Who knew? But there were actually big arguments within the team. Why should a player be able to jump that high? No, that's a cartoon. This isn't some kid's game. This is a realistic basketball game.
Right.
Why is there fire on the ball? I mean, it's like obvious things like, you wouldn't do that for 2K, right? No, it was a serious game. So getting back to this full circle, the first game jam that I'm most well known for that got me in the door that people still know me for was, to me, the least exhibit of what I really do well, which is create the dialogue, create more character. Like that's where NFL Blitz started, the wise guy, you know, the guy who liked crazy stuff to happen. And he goes, oh, unsportsmanlike conduct. He just did a knee drop on that guy's rib cage. Sounded like the wishbone coming out on Thanksgiving. Totally unnecessary. And that's our unsportsmanlike play of the game. Way to go down there, guys. Like encouraging the over-the-top stuff. Once we found that, you know, it was off to the races. Dan Forden, who did the music for MK, was the guy who was like the producer, the guy doing everything else on Blitz. So he worked with me, and he was one who was like, hey, Tim, let's have some fun with it. I want you to start writing that. I mean, there was no one else. There weren't chains of emails going around like, no, we need a professional writer. We need someone on the staff, or it's going to sound like this. He's just, I got an idea. Let's make it kind of crazy. So things were just happening like in the garage, like a punk rock band. Like, let's try these 3 chords. You're like, so there you go. Then MLB Slugfest. It's like, here's the game. You paint the audio score, you know, come up with the character, come up with the humor. The guy that I brought in, they asked me, you know, my advice, who would you like to be color commentator? I said, well, this great character, Jimmy Shorts, who's on the radio, Kevin Matthews, a huge talent in Chicago. He used to tour with Seinfeld and all those guys, the early 80s, stand up. He became an icon in Chicago radio and had this great character. So we did this basically old time, like, you know, Abbott and Costello bickering up in the booth and crazy stuff. So that's the funny thing. All these years later, it's great. So if it was left up to those games, which were hugely successful, obviously Blitz was, obviously if Slugfest, if you go back, it was like one of the top sellers on PS2 that year. It all was in the top like 3 and like Christmas time in the Today Show. Video game recommendations for your kids, MLB Slugfest. Now it's kind of forgotten. It's a niche. If not for Jam, I might not be here, but those 2 games are more exemplary and I'm more proud of than any work I've done.
So, you know, I watched the interview that you did with Austin Creed for Up, Up, Down, Down. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions that I had while watching that interview was that, you know, both of you guys were obviously talking about your history with, you know, the voice work that you've done and the games that you've been a part of and performed for. And I started to kind of wonder, do you, Tim Kitzrow, like have a preference between the old arcade coin-op stuff versus the home stuff? Do you find that there's a difference in the type of person that comes up to you and says, hey man, I used to play Jam in the arcade all the time or Blitz in the arcade all the time, versus folks who, like myself, that I had it on the Genesis and like I was playing it every night?
There's some clear differences that if you were of a certain age to be putting quarters and hanging out in arcades, like it means you were probably, you know, over 10 years old. And so it's kind of cool, like the adolescent guys. Yeah, old enough to have money, but hang out, but to have that vibe of like, it was the virtual playground. Like people are putting quarters on the arcade, like who's got next. It was literally like the who's got next. It was the playground, and who's the hot shot in the arcade that you can challenge. Who, so there was a more of a competitive, like there was a world, there was a whole culture, subculture. You don't get that if you just have you got it for Christmas. You're playing with your brothers. You invite people over to the house, whatever. It's just a different thing. And now it's completely different with put the headset on, play, online with people. It was the experience of like, the difference of going to a concert to like buying a record, a CD, like listen by yourself or have that concert experience. The NBA Jam and Blitz, when it first came out, you talk to people that, like that was our world. Like we would go out on the weekend and we would hang around the jam machine and challenge each other. And you got the bragging rights if you could get your name on the leaderboard. So I feel a bit sad that the hardcore gamers that grew up on the home editions that never got the chance to experience the whole arcade world. It's like in the Last of Us, when they go into that arcade, the overgrown arcade, and they find the Mortal Kombat and play, that brought tears to my eyes, that scene, because I thought something that, I certainly take for granted, and I'm not even a gamer, that there are arcades, but they almost vanished. That's a whole nother, we could do a whole show on how I was went through the period of like the hottest moment to the arcades basically completely died, as far as both a cultural thing about great titles and whatever. But when you see how important the memories for that girl was, like to go to an arcade, to have that, like with all the lights and the bells and the whistles going, there's something, once again, that Christmas, Christmas lights of video game machines, the artwork to me, like ornaments, you're like in a living, breathing space surrounded by the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of the creativity to create the game, whatever the game is, then all the artwork, then all of the music, all the sound effects, all the speech, and you're in that world. It's like being, shrunk and like stuck inside, the cell in the body that's like the brain. It's like all the stuff is going on. That's why there's such an excitement when I go into Galloping Ghost here in Chicago, the greatest and largest arcade in the world. Doc Mack, he supports all of us. He has 1,000 games in there. But when you go in there, there's energy. It's like going in. It's like if you're a Star Trek fan, of like to be on, like on the starship of like, and hearing all the things that you grew up with. When you hear the sounds in the background at an arcade and you hear like, he's heating up and, my sounds, but the Pac-Man sounds, everything, the Mortal Kombat, finish him.
Yeah.
That's it. It's heaven, right? For all of us now that, and I have a different connection, I said, because I'm not a gamer, but now I've spent enough time because it's my fabric of like who I am for all these years. So I go, wow, here's what I kind of missed out on. And now I have a new sudden appreciation for like the nostalgia and the beauty, but because I've met so many people on the road that have done the artwork, that have designed the games, that I know this is the living museum. And what I love is they're playing them. They're not, collectors. It's really expensive. I'm putting it here as my, expensive man cave. No, they're out. The games are out there to play. And that's another reason why the game shows like PRG, Portland Retro Gaming, are the greatest experiences and best money spent for families, because where else can you go? It's not just don't touch, they're behind the cord. You can play these games. The 7, 8, 9-year-old kid, I was just saying, I feel sorry that they never got that experience. You can go to PRG and have all those things going on and play them for free all day. So full circle, the question was a good one. Like the difference between the home and the arcade thing. It's just, if you hadn't played in the arcade and now you grow up and you go to one of these shows, you go, oh, that's what it must have been like. So you can kind of have it's like going to one of those, cowboy villages or, the pilgrim villages. Like, this is how they used to live, kids. They'd walk in here on a Saturday.
So I know you mentioned that you were always a big basketball fan, even before you booked the NBA Jam gig. Are you a Bulls guy? Like, I know you're in Chicago now, but you started out in upstate New York, right?
Yeah, started out in upstate New York, and I played a lot of basketball. Never played organized basketball because we had one of those teams that was like one of the best in the state, Albany High. Okay. And I was a short guy early on in high school. I started out like 5'6" freshman, ended up like 5'11", 6 feet. Right. And could get over the rim by the senior year. I could barely touch the net as a freshman. So like I had this like late in life, like love of basketball, because I always thought I'll be too short, not good enough. So then I worked really hard as my body caught up to like my passion for it. and I just played pretty religiously as much as I could for most of my life. And I was always at the Y here in Chicago playing during the NBA jam time. And I was watching all the Bulls games. Occasionally got lucky, went to a few of the early MJ at the old Chicago Stadium. But upstate New York, I was following the Lakers. And the interesting route was I loved Lou Alcindor when he was on the Bucks when I was a kid, because once again, my fascination for height. I wanted to be tall, like he was 7'4", whatever we were told, 7'2", a giant. But I started watching the Bucks in like 6th grade and followed the Lakers. Then I'm in upstate New York. Phil Jackson is coaching the CBA team for the Albany Patroons. And we go to the games in the Armory. And there's Phil Jackson, hey, Phil, hey, yelling across there. And I move out to Chicago, and who comes along, joins me? Phil Jackson. All of a sudden, he's the assistant coach. I'm like, this is great. From the little Armory, he used to come to bars afterwards with us and with the players, have some chicken wings and a beer. And there I am in Chicago, and I just seen Michael Jordan, the Final Four, then the Olympics, and now I'm in Chicago. Like, I guess that's my team. So what a time, right? And I watched those first few years, 87, 88, 89, 91. NBA Jam comes along. So now I'm like totally invested and playing basketball 4 days a week, at least at the Y. And Jam comes out. I wait on Michael Jordan 3 times at my restaurant that's near the United Center where I'm working at, waiting tables all the time, doing NBA Jam. I'm just like, this is really cool.
Man,
really cool.
Listen, I thought about maybe trying to throw on a Bulls hat just to show Chicago a little love. Decided against it because I'm still bitter about the 92 finals.
Yeah. You know what?
Clyde tried as hard as he could to shut down Jordan, and they still got the better of us.
I like that. I like that team, and I love Clyde Drexler, and I always felt that he was not appreciated for really like the talent that he had, because Jordan overshadowed everybody, and the fact that they had the head-to-head matchup was like Jordan got the bragging rights. A nice little side tale here is one of the gift that keeps on giving, NBA Jam. A few years ago in Cleveland, the All-Star game was there. They invited me as a part of a Michelob Ultra Jam mashup weekend. They're going to do this nostalgia thing, convert a 2-story bar across the street from the stadium into a boom shakalaka bar. But they call
kidding.
And banners. They had a marquee. They put 20 or 30 arcade one-up machines in there. They had a DJ booth. Opening night, they had DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fat Joe because they were original fans and original secret characters in it. And it was like the party happening for the Cleveland All-Star Game. So Ultra Jam, they have 3 cans with He's on Fire from Downtown and Boom Shakalaka Mick Ultra with the pixelized characters on it. And it says Ultra Jam on the side just for that weekend in Cleveland. It's a one-off. So I'm going to be kind of like the MC, host, master of ceremonies for it. And I get there, and they tell me that Dikembe, God bless his soul, Dikembe Mutombo was going to be there. Wilkins and James Worthy and Drexler. They had done a little video in the NBA Jam style in which those characters are all playing in a game together, and it goes at the buzzer. And then it's over, and they go, hey, where do you guys want to go? In NBA Jam animation in this video, say, hey, let's go to Boom Shakalakas. So they walk across the street, and they're in there playing darts and pool and stuff. And I'm going, no good, get that stuff out of here. So I voiced this little video. That was supposed to be the extent of Tim Kitzrow involved with those guys for the All-Star weekend. And then the night before those guys got there to come in to sign autographs, they say, hey, we thought it'd be fun when they're coming in to sign autographs. We put them up on stage with you. You can interview them. You can do Drexler and Worthy on Saturday and Mutombo and Wilkins on Sunday. What do you think? I'm like, yeah, I think I could fit that in my schedule. I think that'd work out. So there I am up on stage, and I get to do and now the 7-foot center went to the University of Dikembe Mutombo. The block doctor is in, and we'll see you now. Have a seat. Just whatever I had for each one of those guys, they came up, they're laughing, cracking up. And I'm the kid just sitting in between these legends and having the time of my life. Just had to pinch myself. I was absolutely relaxed and calm because I went, this is where like it all started. There was magic somehow sprinkled in Chicago to get me into that studio, the long roundabout way to get me in the position to get that job. And here I am 30 years later, sitting down with Hall of Famers and laughing and having a great time. That's the magic of NBA Jam.
Yeah. Midway was doing some incredible stuff back then. And obviously they didn't know it at the time, but Mortal Kombat, banger hit, NBA Jam, banger hit, some of the stuff that Midway was producing really just shot through the stratosphere in a way that I don't think anyone could have possibly predicted because of the state of the industry at the time and the state of gaming at the time. And, we got these new home consoles that are starting to keep up with the arcade machines. So like, what does that mean for the arcade industry? And there was this whole thing when 16-bit and then 32-bit started to kind of take over. The thing though, like, that I as you're telling this story, like I keep thinking in my head, like there's so many more opportunities to be had here based on just this one game that you did with 15 whole lines. I'm imagining you walking by somebody in a Home Depot commercial and it says buckets $10 and the shelf is empty and can't buy a bucket, and you just keep walking.
Can't buy a bucket. See you later. Yeah.
The guy at customer service is upset about these screws he bought and says, nail in the coffin, whatever. So like I'm imagining that it's got to be weird, right? That you only did so many lines for this game because they could only fit so much on the chip for the Genesis cart or for the whatever video game cart. And then here you are all these years later, and there's still people that they love it when you spit the lines out. They love to talk to you about it. Is it weird for you to like go into a room of like hundreds, sometimes even thousands of people that like maybe don't recognize you immediately, but the minute you open your mouth, everybody goes,
weird.
Is that strange?
That's like the, that's the Marvel, like my secret power is like by day, Clark Kent got the glasses on, buttoned up. And my superpower is boom shakalaka, and everybody goes like, yeah. And it's like it's a magic kind of like you're invisible, the invisible man until you do that. My whole life, as I said, all those years of waiting tables after the success of that game, which I didn't see financially, obviously that's why I was waiting tables.
Sure.
But to know that all those years later, I'm just walking around invisible, waiting on thousands and thousands of people and guys who were probably the biggest fans of the game in the world. And all I had to do is, he's heating up. Actually, I got a little bit of cold right now. So he's heating up. But there it is. So there's the fun. Never gets old for me, never gets tired. But what's amazing in that short period of time from 93 to I think it was around 2000, 2001 when NHL Hits was done. But I did 17,000 vocal calls in that game because of the endless rosters and 10 inflections for each player name. These guys made the NHL Hits game up in Canada, hardcore hockey guys, and they were serious about it. So, and there's a lot of hardcore NHL Hits fans out there still, but just to show you like in, the 7-year span, how things changed, for basically an arcade style game.
Which is funny because like that's about the time that late 90s era when NHL Hits was starting to come out and that was happening. Like that's about when I had transitioned from basketball to hockey. And it's like, man, I couldn't get away from you. I think
that is early 2000s. Like I think that Slugfest was early, and then Hits came in right after that.
So I played hockey in the late 90s and into the early 2000s. But by the time I graduated high school in 2002, and so by 99, I got to the point where they're like, yeah, come join the traveling hockey team, and you can pay for all the ice time and hotels and stuff. And I was like, no, I'm not. Wow. I don't have that kind of money. So I had to stop. Plus, like realistically, like you get to a point when you're a teenager where you have to go, okay, do I want to try to pursue a career in hockey or do I want to try to pursue a career in music? Right. And I, even at 14, I was like, well, I'm better at the music thing, so I better just kind of stick with that, and so that's what I did. But man, listen, it's so incredible to get to be around you and be able to talk to you and to hear the stories, and we have so much more to get to, so I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I have so much more to talk to you about, so we'll be right back. Folks, as promised, I have to tell you about the newest update from Legends of Boom, the fast-paced card battle game from the brand new studio First Moon Games. Now that the game is free to play and has been officially released on Steam, I have a series of special codes that will unlock an entire deck box to help you level up your firepower. If you check the show notes for this episode, you'll find a series of codes that look like this. There are 3 codes. one for each current faction within the game. And redeeming this code will open an entire box of 12 card packs, and each pack contains 5 cards drawn at random. This means each code is worth 40 cards you can add to your deck for free. To redeem the codes, simply copy the /redeem part of the code without the brackets, along with the space and the number next to it. Then place that code into the chat console on the home screen and press send. You'll know it works when you see a code redeemed message pop up at the top of the screen. Now that you have your deck box, go to your collection and select unopened packs. There, you'll see the deck box with a button that says open, and when you click on that, you'll go to a screen where you can simply click the box to reveal all 12 card packs. Then simply open the card packs as normal by clicking on them one by one or clicking the fast open button in the corner. Now a warning. These codes will give you so many free cards that duplicates are definitely guaranteed. So I recommend going back to your collection screen and upgrading anything in your deck that needs it before you jump into your next battle. Legends of Boom is a fast-paced RTS light battle game featuring a vice-laden puppet sportscaster named Flip Rimrod, an all-new character voiced by the one and only Tim Kitzrow from NFL Blitz and NBA Jam. Legends of Boom is a fantastic, lightweight pick-up-and-play option for anybody with a Steam account, a Steam Deck, or a similar handheld PC. And it's completely free to play, so make sure you hit the link below to install it and don't forget to redeem your codes. And, of course, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for more information and interviews around Legends of Boom in the coming weeks. Now let's get back to the show. So, Tim, I know you have made a career out of being a voice actor and a performer. One of the things I want to talk a little bit about your time at Second City. I want to talk a little bit more about some of your time in the gaming career. But I would be kicking myself if I didn't take an opportunity for a second and just kind of let you know, man, like I was the kid in my neighborhood that had the basketball hoop outside his house. Mm-hmm. I had a big enough driveway, and my dad put up a hoop on a 4x4 that he mounted in the ground.
Nice.
And everybody in the neighborhood would come to my house to use the basketball hoop. And I remember there was a couple of my best friend would come over on the weekends. We would shoot around a little bit, and then there was a couple of brothers that lived down the street that they would come down the street, bring a ball, and we'd shoot around with each other. And then there was one day, I must have been 8 or 9 years old, and I said, "Hey, I got NBA Jam on the Genesis. You guys want to come play?" and we moved because in Portland it gets cold sometimes, yep. Especially during the like right now. I think today it was 26 degrees in Portland. It's December 2nd, yeah. And it's already getting down below the 30s, wow. Right? And so we we'd go in the house. And we'd straight up play 2-on-2 NBA Jam. And it was like a big part of my childhood. And so as much as I was a big basketball fan, because that's the thing, like Portland only had a basketball team up until the mid 2000s when we finally got a professional soccer team. Mm-hmm. But before that, if you grew up in Portland, it was either you were a fan of basketball or you didn't care about sports. Those are kind of the only two options. And so, moving into the late 90s and into the 2000s, obviously I get a little older. My tastes start to spread out a little bit. And this guy that keeps showing up on these other video games sounds so much like the NBA Jam guy. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Who is this dude? And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about, first of all, I want to take it back to your time at Second City, because I know you mentioned that very briefly in the first half, but that was something I really wanted to ask you about. Because Second City, for folks that don't follow comedy or don't follow like the performing arts, may not know that Second City is responsible for everybody from Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd to folks like Steve Carell. I think you even mentioned that you used to audition with Steve. So
there was, I fell in love with Second City because I was a fan of SCTV, much more so than Saturday Night Live. So you can still find it out there. There are a lot of fans. That's where Martin Short got to start. So look at the SCTV cast.
John Candy too, I think, right?
Miles, if you think of their their lineup versus SNL, best of all time. John Candy, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hare, Martin Short. It's just endless. Dave Thomas. And so all those guys were there, and I was like,
Rick Moranis.
It was just,
yes. Oh my God.
So I'm in New York, and I had my own. I'm classically trained as an actor, so I'm doing stage plays, Shakespeare, Chekhov. Love it, still love it. But there was something missing because I love comedy so much. Like, well, I love SCTV. Hey, Second City's in Chicago. I knew the SNL guys came from there. So I move out to Chicago, audition, get in. But it's not what I think it is. It's a conservatory training school. Even though you had to audition, it wasn't like you were auditioning to, Yale grad school for comedy. Like they were, it was a moneymaker for them. So there were some, obviously, like, every 5-10 weeks their classes come in, and then they do five different levels. So there are good people that are going to come through. Everybody's coming to Chicago. Everybody wants to be comic actor, whatever. But you also get probably 80% of people who are never going to do anything again in the business. A lot of people that are not that good, whatever. So I had my own little improv group that I created out in upstate New York with my brother, some friends. And I thought, like, this is what I want to do forever. I bought a video camera in the early 80s for like $2,000 to make my own bizarre little comedy videos. So there I am in Second City thinking, oh, this is going to be the best. And I've been to one of the best conservatory acting schools in the country at State University of Purchase. My roommate was Stan Tucci. Vin Raines, was like there. It's like lots of, Parker Posey. So it's a good school. So I get into Second City, and the guys in my group.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hang on. Just real quick.
Yeah.
Your roommate was Stanley Tucci?
Yeah. He was a year younger than me. He was in the acting program. Yeah. It was a good school. State University of Purchase. Look it up. Yeah. And Vin Raines, Vin Raines in Ocean's 11. He's in everything. And where's the beef? Anyway, a good school. My point is, so I'm going to Second City, and I'm thinking that I'm going to be with like all these John Candys and everybody on stage. But no, it's just whoever got in for that class for that period. I had a couple people in my class that I really loved, and unfortunately, never, like, you split up after everything goes, but some really good talent. But otherwise, I felt like I was not with really top-notch talent with me on stage, and improv is all about trusting your partner. So the irony is like, okay, treat people like it's their birthday. Like, you have to give everything to your partner. It's all about your partner. Listen to the partner. Well, if you're up there with someone who's kind of deer in the headlights, just not very good, not funny or whatever, you're just going down. You're going down, and then it creates anxiety. That's exactly the opposite of what improv is. Improv is like, I'm listening to you. Whatever you say, I can react off, and we create our world off of just listening. But if you're with people who are uncomfortable improvising, so here I was going through this, going, this isn't what I expected. But then you get to audition every 6 months for their touring company. If you get in the touring company, then you get in their ETC stage, and then from the ETC to the main stage. So there's all these things you have to do to get to the main stage, to get seen, to get on to Saturday Night Live and everything else. So I had 3 years of auditioning to try to get on, to the touring company, the main stage. Didn't get on it. But I was told, like, hey, Tim, you're really good. You're all the guys like looking at you, but you're like number 3 on the list. But then someone said, but number 3 on the list means you're behind like Steve Carell, Steve Carell, and Stephen Colbert, the guys who look like me, white guys who might be leading men, right? Because everybody has a type. You got your big guy, you got your ethnic guy, you got this guy, you got your funny,
Right.
So they have their types. So it's like to play first base for the Yankees when Mattingly's there. You're not going to get that slot in the lineup, right? You keep coming up from AAA every year, like, yeah, you had a good spring training. That's what it was like. So 3 years in, I went, yep, and I'm done. And I never auditioned again. And it was kind of funny because, I was out on auditions. It's Steve Carell and I, we auditioned for a couple of things together. One in particular, we were both auditioning for the host of the new Mickey Mouse Club, which is the Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears era, 90s, whatever TV show. But there we were. It's like, whatever. and I had seen him doing his improv when he was on main stage, and he was just, you knew the guys that were special. I saw Chris Farley make one of his first appearances on stage there. This was everybody. It was Tim Meadows was on stage. It was like Tina Fey. It was everybody. I didn't know that I was in the next golden era. So all my frustration, I'm like, how hard? What do I got to do to get on here? I must not be that good. And the self doubt. Well, I thought I should be here. But I've kind of reconciled it years later, going, I got the chance that nobody else did in the video game industry. Like if Tina Fey or Tim Meadows or Steve Carell, they had their things at 30 Rock, The Office, all their things. I'm the only guy from the Second City DNA that took it into the game world and became a writer, creator, content creator, and performer, not just a voice. Like Tina Fey helped create 30 Rock. I helped create MLB Slugfest, helped create NFL Blitz. So that kind of opportunity for me, I didn't realize, as I said, till years later, that they couldn't just get any voice talent. Like they didn't know, it was kind of a luck on both sides. They didn't know that they were getting me that could end up doing all those things, like a $10-30 million game, whatever Slugfest was, going, hey, you kind of like create the world, right? They have the visuals.
I mean, from a personal perspective, obviously I'm a fan. I've have not been the least bit shy about that fact. But from a professional entertainer's perspective, you not only are sitting at the top of your own mountain, it's a mountain that you helped create.
Yeah.
Which none of them can claim.
Yeah. And it's not even going back to the comparison to them. I just, I feel fortunate, but the stake that I have in the video game world is that I wasn't just a random voice that showed up for one thing or had a hit or whatever, that with all these different projects, there's nobody else in the industry that has, performance backgrounds. I said, classically trained, then Second City, everything else to be in one. Usually it's just, let's go get a voice to do this. Let's get a voice to do that. And generally in the early days they grabbed people around the office for pinball. My start was in pinball. I've done 15 pinball titles. So when someone in the office couldn't do something, they would, hey Tim, can you do that? Like, Gilligan, maybe we could bribe Conan. I love you. Where's my cutting? And it's Rod Serling or Popeye. Wow, blow me down. So that's how I got in, by doing, I'm on the Popeye pinball game.
I had no idea.
And The Shadow and Twilight
I was
Zone.
not ready for that, man.
Wow, bow me down. It's the Sea Hag.
So that was how I got in. So doing the sports stuff later, but then to be in the position to create the world, that's content creating. That's like South Park or whatever, like The Simpsons. You create the world, like there's the visuals. The game is fantastic, but without that crazy world to inhabit, like what if Steve Carell was given, the world of MLB Slugfest or, NFL Blitz, So I went, I got a pretty cool gig here. I'm the only guy from the Chicago, like improv acting scene that got a chance to put my stamp on, some of the cultural iconic games of that generation. So that's my Mount Rushmore, right? I didn't realize it at the time. It's only with this perspective of doing these game shows, doing interviews, that I've had to put my own career in perspective, because there were a lot of years I said I waited tables forever and ever and ever. This was never a payout. This was never a money business. And I didn't set out to do it for anything other than the fun and love of using my voice. And it was $50 an hour back in the early days for extra money. I'm doing this in addition to waiting tables while I'm trying to get my big acting career on track, which never happened, right? So it wasn't until years later I went, I did make a mark, didn't make much money, but I have this as my legacy and I'm still working, and that's pretty good.
Man, it's funny that you mentioned Colbert, because I just saw, I'm a big fan of The Late Show. I'm a big fan of his, and I just saw a social media clip. He does these Q&As when he's not taping the show for air. He does Q&As with the audience, sort of like, in between things, and he'll record them for social. And he had a question from somebody where he talked about one of the things that he learned in improv in his training was to love the bomb. Especially with improv, like it got to a point where it felt like if things were going well with an improv scene, great, things are going well, people are laughing, enjoying themselves, whatever. But if things go poorly or go sideways, he got to a point where he felt like he almost loved that more, because then you lean into it as a performer and some craziness can come out of that.
Yeah.
And he was telling a story about that. And I'm a little bit curious in your experience as a performer, whether on stage or, you know, whether in voice or outside of voice, like, has there been a time where you've bombed really bad and had to sort of like make something from nothing? Like, do you have any experience like that in your past?
Well, actually, I've only done stand up a few times, and I was one of the weird guys that like my first experience, I was nervous going in, but it was like 300 people, and I thought I was going to do
That's a lot.
Yeah. Here the
For a
situation
stand-up
was
show.
I was at SUNY at Purchase, you know, acting, and my summer job was working at the country club, $1 million like country club, and
Okay.
and there was a lot of talent there because a lot of us were working there. So the GM's daughter was an opera singer, and you know, I'm an actor. I go, we're going to do the end of the season. We're going to do like a show for people. We're going to have singers. We're going to have musicians, and you can be the MC. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I wait on these bastards all day, you know. I can do that. And then I went, okay, I'll do a day in a life, like the thing that they don't realize what it's like to be me seeing them. And I had a couple things I scratched down on a couple little waiter pads that you see. I went out there and I'm thinking I'm going to do 10 minutes, and 40 minutes later, I had a couple of those moments like a Scorsese film or something, like, or, you know, like a comedy film where I could feel like the camera out here and see the laughter on the faces. I went, oh man, this is good. Like, I didn't even know where it was coming from. I was just in the zone. I had the microphone for the first time doing stand-up, and I saw people down there as I'm, you know, doing my bits. They're like, that's me. He's talking about me. It's like, so I never went back to it because I was already on the mission that I'm going to be I'm going to be a classical stage actor. So it never entertained, like, I'm not going to go off, do comedy after 4 years of, you know, classical training. I'm going to be in Central Park doing Shakespeare or whatever.
Yeah.
But then when the comedy bug hit me, it was like, no, why I like improv and why I like Second City is the interplay. I like the character interplay, and you see the fun that they have. It's like being the Beatles in comedy. Like when you're together, when you're several people together, you share the same sense of humor. You don't have to try to be funny. Funny happens because you're listening, because you're in the moment. So I never thought that, you know, stand-up was my bit. So I have fun, obviously, when I entertain and I get in front of people, but I've never had moments in theater, fortunately, where it's just all gone sideways. But I totally know the moment, and I've seen it happen for other people, and I like to be the one to kind of like jump in. Like, even at a convention, we're doing a panel, it's just kind of like whatever, it's kind of a snooze fest. I like to shake it up, you know. I like to be the one who kind of drops the bomb and take it in a different direction. So yeah,
inject a little energy in this dying. No, I love that, man. And I think that, like, that's the thing that, you know, I noticed that first time that you and I met, and every time that you and I have interacted since, you know, it's so clear to me that, you know, that thing that you bring to your voice performances comes from a deep love of the process and a deep love of the education and training that it takes to be a very real performer. You know, it never dawned on me that a guy who did voice lines in a video game would have all of this training and pedigree behind the performance. But then as I start to learn more about you and I start to think more about like where you come from and what your experiences were that led to this thing that you recorded for this basketball game, it's like, oh no, this guy was wildly overqualified. Just nobody knew who he was at the time.
Right.
And now I think it shows all of these years later, you've carried this legacy of NBA Jam and NFL Blitz and all of these games, all these performances in video gaming that have been so ingrained in all of these gamers that grew up with it and are now like we're having kids of our own, and we're all at that age where we're sharing them with our kids and stuff. Like I can't imagine this falling off anytime soon. And seeing how you are now, like I was saying at the top of the show, you know, the energy is still there. You're still just as sharp, just as quick, just as passionate as ever. In fact, maybe even more so now that you've found that confidence after the legacy that you've left in your wake. I think you could go another 20 years easy if you wanted to.
Well, the fun thing is that the payoff is, as I said, the gift that keeps on giving. I never wanted to be one of those bitter actors. And believe me, there's plenty in this town, every town, that you didn't get the big break. You see the other people go on to do their things. And I said, no, it's, I've got my own thing and be happy with it. And I made the most of it. What happened is all these people who grew up playing it now are in the position to hire me, either their own game company or they work in advertising. And right now, if you've been watching ESPN or NFL and you hear a Visible Wireless commercial that says, he's got nothing but daylight, boom goes the pinata, Visible Wireless, take the visible leap. That's me. And I even gave them their tagline. When the guy scores, they go, take the visible leap, thinking of the Lambeau leap. So they got, I got to the studio. They're like, oh man, we're such huge fans of Blitz. We grew up on it. We were thinking of you for this routine, for this ad campaigns. We wrote it in with you in mind and we pitched it to our client, to Verizon. They loved it. And so that's the new ad campaign. So that's the thing. All these years later, the payoff is there. Now, as I said, people grew up listening to me. And now that's one of the reasons I got into First Moon Games and doing Legends of Boom, because Joe and Aaron were obviously, familiar with my work. And they're like, hey, who are we going to get that can perform, can write, to do this comedy, whatever. And so it's not like I was always ready, and they say, the preparation, when meets an opportunity, people call it luck, but like I was always ready to do this stuff. I was ready. I could have done anything, but I didn't have the opportunities. That was the frustrating part in Chicago. It's like I did this, but no one was going to say back then, hey, let's get that guy who did Jam or Blitz. And they wouldn't think of me for anything else, or for TV or other roles, or for first-person games. All the other video games really are happening on the West Coast. I was here, my son was here, so like I wasn't going to do a big move and go, I'm going to follow the video game industry. So I just kind of sat dormant creatively for a long time in Chicago. So that's another reason why the energy and the explosive creativity with Legends of Boom and any other project I'm involved in, it's like all I wanted was that chance to get back to the show. Be that first baseman, but Manley finally died. Thank God. I get a couple of swings in at Yankee Stadium. So that's what I'm doing. Taking my cut.
They say in Hollywood that one of the signs that you've made it is that instead of having to audition for parts are being written with you in mind.
Yeah.
That has to feel incredible. Tell me how that feels to know that people are looking to hire you specifically because they created a role where they were thinking about you the whole time they were creating that.
Well, that was the one, the most obvious one. So the funny thing is, though, over the years when I go in for any or against sent an audition, it'll say David Schwimmer type, or they'll always have their name, think Michael McKean or whatever. They always give you the suggestion, and I go, why did they say we're looking for a few years you're going to say looking for the Tim Kitzrow type, looking for Tim Kitzrow. I got one or two auditions over the years that said, think Tim Kitzrow NBA Jam or something. And I auditioned for it and didn't get it.
Are you kidding me?
And but this one was the one where I went, it makes sense. And it's really surprised me just from the financial standpoint that other marketing people haven't gone, hey, the guy who reached tens of millions of voices or ears from people who are in that sweet spot to buy products, advertise they hear my voice. It's like, it's a bell. It's like a Pavlovian dog, ding, what? I'll buy it. Yeah. They put me in this wonderful guy, Joe Kamikawa, who used to be at Midway, who's now the head of Zynga, or he's at Zynga Games and also Aristocrat Gaming. They do all the Big Bang Theory, Wheel of Fortune for Las Vegas. He put me into the first ever NFL license game in the casinos called NFL Slots. There's 10 games within the one big slot game. And he said, I just thought it'd be the greatest Easter egg in the world. All these guys are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, showing up and playing at the slots and hearing that voice from Blitz. And so that's been that was the biggest gig I've ever gotten. So any casino in the world right now, you can hear my voice in NFL Slots.
So then I think the next natural question has to be, what do you think would be a next step for you in your process, in your career? Is there something that you haven't done yet that you'd like to do, or is there something that you're thinking about doing next?
Well, I'm hoping that it all comes through the vehicle of First Moon Games, the opportunity to have a game company, not just a title. but a game company where
Because
there's
you
also,
founded First Moon with the guys.
yeah, I mean, basically they found me and I founded them.
Sure.
Like they said, hey, be a part of our group. And I was like, are you? Yeah, of course. It's like this opportunity is it's something I've been waiting for, to be a creative partner, to help, like, once again, bring in the tone, to bring a video game, give it an extra edge, like make it like a late night talk show, or, a stand-up comedy, or going to Vegas, whatever. Bring in a character that entertains people as and before they get to the game and while they're in the game, whatever. Such a unique concept. But it's basically what I did in Blitz, and there's other games, like you come in and welcome to the game Mutant Football League, which I'm doing now. Hi everybody, Grim Blitzer with you. Entertain people when they show up to the platform, give them, entertain them throughout it. And so I think that with this company, it's unlimited, like what we can do now. The technology of having an animated avatar, whether it's a Muppet, it can be anything animated. I can now voice multiple characters. And that's what we want to do eventually, is have me show up as various different characters in there, and have me, like, after work, like, have scenes now on a YouTube channel, like Flip going into Ohini's, places that we're referencing in there. Like, you think of like Cheers, or, the old shows, like they always had their locations, so have a bar where Flip can hang out and I'll be the bartender. I'll be the guy next to him, or the news guy. Think of The Simpsons or Futurama, Family Guy. Like, I'm the news guy. Like Seth MacFarlane does all those voices. So basically this is the beginning of
Hank
where I
Azaria.
want to go. Yeah. Hank Azaria, all those guys.
Yeah.
Dan Castellaneta, Homer.
Oh, God.
Another Second City guy. My agent here in Chicago, she said, Tim, see that right there? That's Dan Castellaneta. He's, Homer Simpson's. Like, I was the, agent, got him his first work, blah, blah, blah. So, like, Chicago's rich with history. Is like, I want to be the guy that I could do a Zoom thing with 4 or 5 different characters in here talking to each other. Like, it's unlimited. So it's basically bringing the full circle of where I was talking about the Second City, the Office, the Tina Fey, 30 Rock. Have my own creation of a kind of a show, a YouTube show, where if you go to First Moon Games, we're going to have lots of different titles. And now you can go to the YouTube channel, hang out with me as either me inviting people on, other guests like voiceover celebrities, actors, whatever, or I can be in Muppet form, or not Muppet, but puppet avatar animated form, interacting with people. I can interact with myself on another screen as an avatar. So it's pretty endless, really.
It becomes this limitless vehicle for you to be able to find new ways to express and find new ways to play.
Think of The Daily Show. My favorite time with The Daily Show was when Steve Carell and Colbert were on at the same time. A lot of those the reporters, they have so many good guys that came through there. Almost all of them from the Annoyance Theater or Second City in Chicago. But what they were doing when they were the reporters, that was the best stuff. Steve Carell,
Steve versus Steve, where they would argue.
It's just so much good stuff. So I could be the host of the show and then go to my, on the street reporter, and he'd be me as an avatar, whatever. So the possibilities are really just so exciting right now, where we can go. Of course, it's great to start to have more commercial interest. As I said, I think that this visible, commercial campaign is going to wake up a lot of people. I've been getting calls from around the country and texts like, man, I just heard you during the basketball game, the TNT game, or I heard you here, and so great to hear your voice again. It's like people like, wow, I'm back, and like, why haven't other products, sports products especially, started to do things like Dunkin' Donuts, like, Daddy can't go to work without his coffee and donuts. You bring the coffee, and I'll bring the Dunkin'. Boom shakalaka. And the Dunkin' drive-through lane is wide open for Giannis tonight. And the Dunkin' drive-through lane is open all December. When you collect, get your 10. They could tie it in with like shootouts.
Hashtag not a sponsor.
Yeah. You could go to the game and they could have, and now Dunkin' Donuts presents the Dunkin' Munchkin Shootout during a timeout where you get little 3-year-olds dunking on a little Nerf hoop. The hoop looks like a little pink sprinkled donut, and I'm out there calling it. And it's like, and they shoot the ball that looks like a little Munchkin donut. The Dunkin' Munchkin Shootout brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. The Dunkin' drive-through lane is wide open. I mean, if you sat me down in a room and gave me 20 different, products, I could have a whole ad campaign for each one of them.
Man, I just, the possibilities, the opportunities there. Like, I'm so glad that you found this, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase, a second wind. Right. Yeah. Second City, Windy City. But this second wind for your career, where you're now, exploring these other opportunities, these other options, man, like, it's it's so great to see you find that confidence and make that decision to move forward and try new things. Cause like,
And,
I can't imagine a version of this where we don't get more Tim Kitzrow,
oh,
where NBA Jam and NFL Blitz just was the end of it. Like that would be so heartbreaking, man. So I'm so glad that
well,
like
dude,
you're doing
that
what you're doing
that
now.
means so much, not just because like you're a good friend. You know, when we first hooked up, I knew that you were like, you were the kind of human being that I like to spend time with. You
Oh,
know,
come on, man.
I'm saying that seriously. That's why we had, we had fun, and you were so humble and grateful to me. I'm like, man, this guy's giving me his microphone. He's a he's a sweet guy. Like, that's why I respond to people, like, the real world. But what I'm saying is like that it means so much because not only just you as a friend telling me that, but you represent a lot of people who, when I go to the shows, like we would have bought more from you. We would have like loved to have been entertained more. So it's nice to know that there was there is still a hunger that I can still deliver because I love it so much. And I think what the alternative universe is, how many times have you seen someone who had a hit TV show or hit song from 30 years ago? So now we're behind the scenes at VH1, David Lee Roth,
Yeah.
name the band. Name the TV series, hit sitcom. There's like the interview. I'm like, well, drinking, all just broken down, like the broken dreams, because they had the success. They rode high with money, infights, this and that. For whatever reason, you rarely see someone who had a big success 30 years ago in a place of like health, creativity, and going forward. It's like the sad look back often. And that's what I'm really grateful for. It's like, I was never going to, as I said, give in to any bitterness or this or self-destruction. It's like, I'm always waiting for the next opportunity. Always.
Well, and in music, and I'm sure you know about this, but for folks that maybe don't, that are watching this, in music, they've got something called the 27 Club.
Yeah.
Which, is tragic.
Don't want to be a part of that.
But it's real. And so, to have you still here, to have you still have your health and your energy and be able to deliver like it, like it was yesterday, man. Like honestly, every time I hear you do one of those lines, every time I hear you throw out a boom shakalaka, it feels the same as it did in '92.
Hey man, I could be Corey Feldman going around the country playing fake guitar solos. Corey Feldman, like the people who do their nostalgia tours based on whatever their 50 minutes of fame were. Mine, it feels so good because I've never had to rely on anything artificial. Like I have my voice, I have my creativity. That's all I got. It does, even though NBA Jam is the title, it's the experience of what it was. Like people recognize, like all of those games just had energy, they had passion, they had fun. And that's what I like to bring to the table.
Well, I'll tell you where I'm coming from. When we first met and that first time I handed over my microphone, at that point in my career, I'd been more than 20 years in as a DJ. I started in '98, man.
Wow.
So I was 14. And, over those 20 years, I can't tell you how many hundreds, possibly even thousands of people have gone, hey, man, give me the mic. I want to shout out my boy. Or, hey, man, give me the mic. I want to call out the groom or whatever. It's like, no, you're drunk. You're drunk and I don't know you. There's no version of this where I'm going to hand over my microphone and let you take over a room of 100 or 1,000 people. It's just not going to happen. But then when Tim Kitzrow comes up and says, hey, man, can I borrow your microphone? You say yes and you stand back. And that's exactly what I did. And I'm so glad that I had the presence to reach over and hit the record button on my laptop so that I could capture it. Because it was magic, man.
I'll tell you, when you were saying earlier about like, what does it feel like to be the guy, like, the voice, and I told you about the Superman, the hidden voice thing, for so many years, because I felt like I was invisible. I said, just lost, waiting tables. I didn't realize that I had this secret power. So when we did, getting back quickly, NBA Jam with EA Sports 2010, 2011, redid it. So we go to
the On Fire edition.
So we go to E3. And this game,
there it is.
And it was up against, like, the EA had their other big title was like some ultimate fighting game. And they had like the biggest area was all the MMA, and they had all these cameras. And they had the new NBA Jam release. They did a nice thing. I was, got out on stage with the CEO and did some live stuff on stage. But at the end, this game won best sports game at E3 in 2020. Not 2020. A few years.
It was like
2010. 2010.
Yeah.
2010. So here all those years later, that becomes the hottest game again. And EA Sports never put more money into it. They did one more year, the 2011 On Fire edition, got the greatest reviews, never put any more money into it. But anyway, I'm out there doing the E3 thing, and the Lakers were playing the Celtics. That was a very historic series, 2010. And they were in Los Angeles that night, right next to the Staples Center.
That was the height of LeBron Kobe, right?
Not LeBron, Shaq Kobe.
Or no, I'm sorry, Shaq and Kobe. Yeah.
So the convention center, and then right next to the convention center, I'm walking by to see this ESPN studios. I went, huh. And I just had this I'm going to go in there and talk to those guys because I want, little press for, the NBA Jam, EA Sports version about E3, whatever. And I just said, I could just go in there. I go into front desk. Hi, can I help you? Yeah, I'd like to. Who's on air right now? Like something like that. Like, well, right now it's DJ so-and-so. I was like, oh, could you tell him Tim Kitzrow is here from NBA Jam? They go, do you have an appointment? Like, no, they're on the air right now. And I went, no, just tell them from NBA Jam. And I just kind of thought that was the first time I went, I'll bet these guys know the game. Like that was the first time it occurred to me, like everybody who's over 30 who's in sports knows the game. And the woman was looking at, young receptionist, like, yeah, you're going to go into the studio. Goes,
yeah, sure, okay, buddy, whatever.
I'll call him. It's like, yes, Tim Kitzrow from what? NBA Jam. Oh, yes, right away. Oh, they want you to go right up. And it was like, boom, 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 up the door, literally walked in the door while they're on the air, jumped on, did 10 minutes with them and a bunch of promo calls for them. But it was like, that was that kind of a scene in a movie that you love to see. Like the guy comes from waiting tables, flies into LA, jumps in like, the car service onto the stage in front of thousands of people with the CEO from EA Sports, walks across the street, goes into the studio, and then back home and then back on the schedule. I got to work tonight. That was my Cinderella life. Forever.
That's because they knew what I know, which is when Tim Kitzrow asked to borrow your mic, you say yes.
Yeah. And it was just to see DJs just doing that kind of like, oh, man. It's like, you're listening to WLAK from downtown Los Angeles. Tonight's matchup, Celtics versus Lakers. And they were like, and I was thinking, why don't people think of that in the business to have that be a regular promo for TNT or something? Tonight's matchup. Everybody knows it, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's, I think it's going to be really, really cool to watch as you continue on this journey and continue on this process. Not only because I think for what you're doing with First Moon Games is cool, because like I think Flip's a really interesting character, and I think that there's a lot of really cool opportunities. Obviously, you've got the one game going right now, but Flip as a character is universal. He transcends the game that he's currently on. He can do anything. So
we talked a little bit before we got on. So I wanted to say about Flip.
Sure.
Flip is he's a character that just popped out. These guys from First Moon, Aaron and Joe, great guys. They came up with this idea. They reached out to me. They said, "Hey, we're thinking of putting you in the game as the host." And they went, "Here's you." And they kind of made this. Flip's supposed to be based on me, hair and glasses.
Yeah, right.
And I was thinking, like, huh,
I see it.
I just but it took me a second. Like, never thought of myself as a mom. And then they sent me. They had one made, a custom made one from like the ones they make for Sesame Street, like three, like huge, like your whole hand goes up. It shows up at the door. I put it on. I turn my video camera on, and before you know it, like it was the most beautiful thing where he turns to me. We look at each other. It's like when my son was born. Like you have that moment where you hold your newborn for the first time. You look like, well, we're going to go on some adventures. What's this going to be like? And it was first time ever with a full size puppet. And we had this whole, and he told me who he was, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I can't thank those guys enough that it's given me a vehicle to get away and outside of myself, which is always great in acting. Like find a character. That's why masks and costumes and this and that. But Flip, he's the voice that I've wanted forever, like for my comedy stuff. So check him out at Flip Rimrod on any of the socials. I think you're going to show some clips. I did 20 job interviews with Flip because I thought, like, in order to, instead of talking about a video game, like video game's really cool and my character is like this, show him. So I put 20 interviews of him going out for random job interviews because he's been unemployed for a long time. Yeah. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun? Like we all had this, like we've all been on job interviews that we just like the questions and like, where do you see yourself 5 years now? How would you solve a conflict at work with a coworker? Like all that nonsense. So Flip he's no real filter. So It was so much fun doing these things. So I want people to check those out, whatever social media platform you use at Flip Rimrod. This is the taste of where I want to go with this is him showing up on Triumph the Insult Dog. He's that same kind of similar that there's someone who can show up anywhere. And just like he goes to like Star Wars conventions and interviews people. That's like Flip is that guy. I want to take him on the plane with me, different places and film him. And that's the fun though of First Moon Games is these guys realize, let's do something no one else is doing. Let's bring entertainment to the meta is like there's a game within a game. Like there's entertainment within entertainment. You come to like the Hunger Games, whatever. Like Flip shows up as the big MC, Carnival Barker, and meets Daily Show talk show host Johnny Carson, and then he's involved in the game. I mean, who's doing that? Like, it's such a cool idea. So
I love it.
Please, check out the game. You and most people know I'm not a gamer, not a big gamer, because I like the magic of just like creating my world. But when I grew up, it just wasn't a thing. And my money, my quarters, my time, Chicago, 80s, 90s, it's all about career. So there was no hanging out and playing video games, whatever. And I feel bad sometimes that I missed out on a lot of really cool stuff. My friend who like designed Cubert, Warren Davis. Like I wish I found that game when I was younger, like that had that attachment from like the early years with some of those classic games. Getting sidetracked a little bit. My point is, all these years later, I've got a character and doing something that kind of goes back to the fun that we had at Midway. And you think of Brian Cole and all his great jobs, General Chaos and Rampage, and he always had humor in his games. There was always Narc, basically like the what's the big game that Narc is based on? The ones where right now picking up prostitutes, the Grand Theft Auto, wouldn't exist without Midway. That was all like Total Carnage, Narc kind of stuff, like pushing the boundaries. But Midway was the first to just do that. So I have a chance now with and this is this isn't even a handheld game yet, and I can't wait to First Moon we start doing some of that stuff to reach everybody.
Steam Deck. A lot of folks are playing it on their Steam Deck, actually.
That's great.
And it's it plays really well in a handheld format on the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
John Hancock mentioned that he plays it. Mr. Rightway mentioned that he plays on a Steam Deck. In fact, I think even Adam Koralik was talking about how he likes to take it on his Steam Deck and kind of take it with him when he goes places.
That's what I'm so excited for, is to see a new generation get that flavor, that taste of a fast-paced, high-energy game. Good payoff, good adrenaline, cool stuff, cool artwork, and then hopefully get entertained along the way, the ride. Like fun stuff is happening. Surprise element. It's not generic. There's nothing generic. That's why indie games are so great. There's not a chain of command of emails and HR and everybody going, we can do this, we can't do that, we can do this. I like to get a little more the Adult Swim side. It's a little tricky place in the video game world, because the video game world is much more sensitive than TV. Crazy, because Family Guy, American Dad, Adult Swim, South Park. Watch one episode of South Park, and you will be convinced you're on a different planet because of the way PC and everything is now. Like, they get away with everything, but you can't do that in the video game world. If stuff is live streaming, the algorithm, the bot might go, "Oh, that's hate speech," because I'm making because Flip is having fun. Like, and it's not even taken in context. Like, Flip is talking about his uncomfortable, with this or that, or makes it a joke, because the point is, this world of video games, I hate the fact that there's still so much, editing and people telling you what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
We need more free speech on this platform, and we need to rein it in. Like, Flip is a good guy. He's got a good heart. There's no hate speech coming from him, but everybody's so sensitive about things. But getting back to like why I think this is the coolest game and people are going to fall in love with it is it checks all the boxes. I said, high speed, high intensity, high adrenaline, good payoff reward for like collecting your cards and the comedy. And then you're entertained, like, as opposed to just most games, like, that people don't even bother because they go, well, people don't really, they just put their own music on anyway. They turn it off. They just wanted some sound effects. It's like when I did Rage 2, I did a voice pack for that. If you ordered Rage 2 in advance, you get the Tim Kitzrow voice pack. So first-person shooter game, like, pow, pow, puppy chow. Oh, that's going to hurt. Kaboom, from downtown. It's crazy to see that, two different worlds colliding. And that's kind of like what we're doing here, because you have all these big booms and, everything going on. So, like, Flip getting in there with that. anyway, it's a great, great game, and I'm glad that we've had all these wonderful people. John Hancock and Adam Korlick, everybody coming on. Steven, these are all guys that I meet on the road too, and it's like, how cool now that we're able to do something fun and creative, as opposed to just like say hi and bye when we're on the road. Well, Steven, a few guys I get to hang out with more. We've shared some dinners together, but it's kind of nice to bring these people in and go, oh, let's have some fun, let's create. So having a blast with that. Hope people are enjoying what we're doing, our little mashups.
I really love that, and I love that you're building a vehicle that's not just your vehicle, but it's a vehicle that is designed to allow others to come play in that space. So I absolutely wish you the best. I wish you the best with First Moon. Obviously, I wish you the best in the other parts of your career that you've been pursuing over the last few years and will continue to. Tim, I unfortunately we're running a little bit low on time here, but I want to ask you, like, where can folks find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they keep up with what you're doing?
Well, I'm not a big person for every day, like doing something with social media, but what I like about First Moon right now is now with Flip going, that will be my vehicle. I will get out of bed at 2 a.m. to create stuff to put out, because Flip is my outlet. So right now, I would say follow First Moon Games, and there you can find on YouTube also, and at Flip Rimrod. Just follow at Flip Rimrod, and I will promise I'm going to start putting out more and more daily and weekly stuff, just random stuff, just entertainment stuff. Otherwise, me, Tim Kitzrow, you can find me on all the usual places, but usually unless I'm going to a show or something, I'm not very active. But it's fun. Look for me. Whatever city you're in, I do lots of shows around the country. Come visit me. That's where we have all the fun. There are so many markets right now. You know them all, but Portland Retro Gaming, one of the great shows, Midwest Gaming Classic. So look for me. Come into a city near you. And I'm looking forward to people sending. Here's the other thing. When you go to at Flip Rimrod, write comments. Like the old Letterman show or something, like we're going to viewer mail or whatever. I like to interact with people. So sometimes in the game, I go, hey, Arnie, we've got some viewer mail here. We got some text to read, got some comments on X. So I'm making fictitious comments from people, but I want to interact with people actually trying to reach out to Flip, whether purposefully to kind of bait him, or to do whatever. But I want to have fun with going back and forth with the audience that's enjoying the game. So,
you heard it here first, folks. Yeah. If you leave a comment for Flip Rimrod, he might read it in game.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
That's incredible. Well, listen, Tim, thank you for the decades of your work and your influence and your energy and excitement that you've brought to my gaming experience. And of course, thank you for taking the time today to sit down with me, man. I can't tell you what this means to me.
Hey, this is kind of like hanging out with you for dinner in Portland. And I'm glad that we had more fun because, there was a big table, 10 of us. So I'm glad that you and I had this chance. And that's the way I feel. Hey, that's the way I feel with everybody on the road. All these great people. You are one of those people.
Thank you.
You're tops, man. And thanks for spending the time with me.
Getting you and Carlos Pacina in a room together, that's its own kind of magic, man. You two feed off each other like nothing I've ever seen. It's definitely brothers from another mother, and the other guys too, Paul and Dan. We all came from the same litter. Yeah, those guys were so much fun, and thank you again for that experience. That was really, really incredible for me. So,
DJ Switch at the buzzer, boom shakalaka, and this game is in the books.
Man, what a way to kick off 2025. A huge thank you to Tim Kitzrow. Thank you to General Malice and Malice Media for helping sort of facilitate this whole thing. And man, Tim was so incredibly generous with his time, not only to give me a nice full interview for this episode, but also there's an additional half an hour's worth of content. There's almost an entire other podcast that I'm going to be putting up on the Patreon. So if you want to hear more of Tim's stories, we get into talking a little bit about music. We get into talking a little bit about some of Tim's other interests over on the Patreon. So go to patreon.com/DJSwitchPDX, and you can check out not only the extra content for this episode, but all of the other episodes that I've recorded for this podcast. Pick Up and Play was a project that had a very specific purpose in mind when I originally started it. And the scope of this show has changed somewhat. With that in mind, I'm going to be taking a small break from Pick Up and Play, but I will be bringing it back. I do have some plans specifically for the Pick Up and Play show in 2025. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, or if you're not following me on any of my social media platforms, I strongly recommend that you do, because some of what I have planned for 2025, just even in the first quarter of 2025, I am so excited, and I wish I could say more. At this time, I can't, unfortunately, but the exciting part is this is the type of stuff that's big enough that I've been sworn not to say anything until I'm able. So, man, I really wish I could tell you all what's happening, but it's very exciting. I'm very excited. Please make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned, because I will be seeing you again very, very soon. Thanks for watching this episode. Thank you again to Tim Kitzrow, and we'll see you on the next one.